We bring in Omar Baddar, Deputy Director of the Arab American Institute. And Omar, what are the main problems as you see them with AIPAC?
Well, look, AIPAC is one of the most powerful lobbying organizations in Washington by the acknowledgement of many members of Congress and even by the bragging of AIPAC officials themselves. Jeffrey Goldberg, who's perhaps the leading pro-Israel journalist in the U.S., who's now the editor of The Atlantic, he recalled a story where he sat with a high-ranking official in AIPAC who handed him a napkin in a restaurant and said, within 24 hours, AIPAC can have 70 senators have this napkin signed for you. I mean, that's the kind of influence that we're talking about. And like, you know, AIPAC is just one of many powerful lobbying organizations in the U.S., whether it's the NRA, whether it's the fossil fuel industry, or whether it's sort of the health insurance, medical insurance industry. These are all lobbies that influence politics with money. And the idea that the Israel lobby is somehow an exception to, you know, money in politics is just completely preposterous. They're just another lobby that behaves in the same direction. And like many of these lobbies, once they grow to become this powerful, they sometimes start pushing for policies that are counterproductive, that are not basically in the best interest of U.S. citizens or for the issues that they're advocating on. And in the case of AIPAC, obviously they're pushing for a carte blanche for Israel to behave as it wants with the Palestinians and imposing all these abuses on them without accountability. And at home, they're behaving in ways that undermine the First Amendment rights of American citizens by pushing these bills that try to criminalize basically criticism of Israel through the form of boycotts. And this is really the primary problem with AIPAC.
And to be clear, I mean, AIPAC represents a number of conservatives in their views of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. There is a more progressive view of the conflict that is represented by J Street. But regarding AIPAC, you mentioned Jeffrey Goldberg. Over the past decade, there has been criticism of AIPAC from Israel supporters, including Tom Friedman, Jeffrey Goldberg, J.J. Goldberg. But conservatives are calling Ilhan Omar an anti-Semite for her criticism of AIPAC. What's going on here?
Mm-hmm. So look, I think, you know, let's be clear about the fact that all of this backlash is not about concern about bigotry. There's no question about that. I mean, you played that clip of President Trump talking about, you mentioned actually that, he talked about very fine people in Charlottesville who are white supremacists. But that's not all. I mean, he also campaigned in a very anti-Semitic way when he was running for president. One of the examples is when he met with the Republican Jewish coalition. He actually told them, I don't think I'm going to get your support because you like to control politicians and I don't need your money. I cannot think of any more sort of like stereotypically racist and anti-Semitic depiction than the one that the president engaged in. And when Thomas Friedman in the New York Times talks about how the Israel lobby had bought and paid for a standing ovation among members of Congress for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, nobody bats an eye about that. And the reason is because the president is sort of this kooky right-winger, and Tom Friedman is a centrist pro-Israel voice, and they don't see them as a threat to the pro-Israel consensus in American policy.
So in other words, if you're a supporter, if you're a supporter of Israel, then you can criticize AIPAC and you get away with it. But if you're not a supporter of Israel and you also criticize AIPAC, and oh, by the way, you happen to be Muslim, then somehow you're anti-Semitic? I mean, is it as simple as saying this is Islamophobia?
So Islamophobia is absolutely a part of it, but it's not just that. It's Islamophobia. They see these people, they see members like Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar as vulnerable because of the climate of Islamophobia. But ultimately, their crime is pushing for a progressive change in American policy to change basically this consensus on American-Israeli relations and calling for a more even-handed approach and accountability. And the effort by a lot of these people who are now smearing them, it's really an effort to smear and intimidate and silence anybody who's trying to meaningfully change American policy on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Does it also diminish historical significance when you have some conservatives who will suggest that Ilhan Omar is somehow like Hitler, as I saw a conservative do last night? I mean, that seems to diminish the actual significance of what Hitler did in order to score some political points.
Absolutely, and it's incredibly contemptible and distasteful. I mean, look, anti-Semitism is a real problem in the United States and a growing one. And to trivialize it by throwing it around at critics of Israeli policy or the Israel lobby is absolutely not doing favors to anybody who cares about genuine anti-Semitism. This is really just reprehensible political, they've turned a real meaningful issue of bigotry and something that we should all unite about defeating, which is the growing problem of anti-Semitism. They've turned that into political football to score political points, and it really is reprehensible.
Omar Baddar, Deputy Director of the Arab American Institute. And Omar, thanks for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much.